Hello, welcome to Lion and Mouse Commentary. We're your hosts, Tori
and Holland.
Two best friends as different as a lion and a mouse. Today we're reviewing Spy Fox in dry cereal, and we'll be ranking it on our objective scale of 0 to 10 with only 2 points allotted for personal taste. As always, feel free to agree, disagree, or just learn about something new. And as always, tread lightly, there are spoilers ahead. Cut to the intro. Okay, welcome to the Lion's Den. New listeners, we break down these scoring systems by category as we go, but the full breakdown is always available on our website. You can look at our handwritten notes there. So with that being said, we'll get started. So today I chose Spy Fox in dry cereal. This was actually blind to me, but familiar to Holland. It's something I've been wanting to play with Holland for a while, and so for the podcast, it seemed just kind of like the perfect opportunity to do that. So, that's why I picked it. This is a video game that was released on October 17th, 1997 on Windows, ported to Wii in 2008, iOS in 2012, Android and Linux in 2014, and finally ported to Switch in 2022. It's the first of the 3 Spy Fox games by Humongous Entertainment. Stars the voices of Bob Zink, John Patrick Lowe, Gina Nagy, Ken Boynton, Scott Burns, and Shelley Reynolds. And then this is the synopsis that I pulled from IMDb of all places. It says, William the Kid has stolen all the dairy cows in an effort to take over the dairy industry. Spy Corps has sent their top agent, Spy Fox, to stop William's plan of dairy destruction. Monkey Penny, who gives Spy Fox important clues. Professor Quack gives Spy Fox his inventions or gadgets. Walter Wireless, who helps Spy Fox track down William the Kid's hidden fortress, and Mata Hari, who gives Spy Fox passwords. They help out Spy Fox on the mission. Along the way, he meets the villains Artemis J. Big Pig, Russian Blue, and Hong Kong Doodle, and of course, William the Kid himself. It's set in the Greek island of Acidopolis. Spy Fox gets clues from the inhabitants of the island, and aboard the suspicious SS Deadweight, it's up to Spy Fox to stop William's plans to make dairy milk go bad. So that's the situation we have.
That's a great synopsis. I've actually never read that synopsis.
I've got it off of IMDb.
That's pretty good.
So, we'll dive into the first category, and Holland will take us away.
All right. So, this is actually really interesting. Just a little side note. It's really interesting because this is the first time in an episode where the person that chose the episode, it's actually blind for them and not blind for the other person. So, full disclosure here, I have played Spy Fox since I was a youngin'. So, I remember playing this game when I was in the age demographic of who this game was geared towards. And then I've also played it again as an adult. So, just kind of wanted to leave that little note before I get into my review. So, our first category for video games, which Spy Fox is a computer game, is character, story, and world. So total possible score of 2 for this, and I gave it 2 out of 2 points. I do feel like I need to kind of give the disclaimer that this game is a very old game by, modern standards. I mean, a lot of people would see games that came out 5 years ago as old games because video games and technology changes so rapidly. So I tried to take into consideration that this game was released in, 96? 97?
97.
97. Yeah. So it's not going to be the highest quality game. It's not going to be the best graphics or the best, mechanics or gameplay because the technology just wasn't there. Like, computer games just have come a long, long way. However, I do think that in building the characters and building the story of this game, it does a really good job. It is a game for kids. I think the target demographic is at least 6 and up. So it's a game for really young players. The part of the game that's really well done is Spy Fox really is a James Bond parody. So Spy Fox introduces himself as Fox, Spy Fox. I mean, Monkey Penny and Quack are parodies of James Bond characters, classic James Bond characters. So the spy context of the game really does double down on that James Bond parody. I think the humor, playing as an adult, the humor is something I really noticed was just great in this game. So many jokes that I just did not get when I was playing as an elementary school, you know, even in just a middle school age player. Because I continued to play Spy Fox well after I aged out of the demographic, just because I enjoyed the game so much. The humor is just really geared towards adults. Kids think that the slapstick and kind of like goofy humor is funny, but then the dialogue has a lot of humor that kids are just not going to get. I think one of the characters early on in the games makes a joke about the unemployment office, like needing to go to the unemployment office because now he doesn't have a job because he was kidnapped and his company was sabotaged or something like that. So things like that, a kid's not even going to know what that is. The characters in this game, I think, are really good at being kind of fleshed out as much as a kid's game kind of can flesh out characters. Monkey Penny is really helpful. She is able to kind of like give you hints if you need them. Quack has does all the gadgets, and they both have pretty distinct personalities, and they fulfill the expectations that they've established as in introducing these characters to you. The length of the game, I think, is pretty good for an adult. I think Tori and I played this game together. I kind of watched her play it for the first time, and it took her about 2 hours to complete the game in its entirety. For children, which is the target demographic, it can take much, much longer. I remember as a kid taking several days to figure out how to beat the game because, of course, this was in, the late 90s, early 2000s. There really weren't internet walkthroughs and cheat codes and hints online. It was really just kind of figuring it out for yourself. And I do also like that aspect of the game that you have to figure it out on your own. The stakes of the plot, just kind of in general with the story, it is that comical, like, world domination. Like, the villain of the story is a goat, ironically, who wants to get rid of the dairy milk industry and replace everything with goat cheese and goat milk products and things like that. And it's entertaining as an adult because it's like, well, of course he's going to be a goat with these motives. But then as a kid, you just kind of appreciate because all the characters are these anthropomorphic animal characters. So of course it's really like overinflated, it's comical, it's, played for laughs, but then they've built a very realistic world in a sense, and so the characters that you're interacting with, the side characters and things like that you're interacting with have little backstories, and the more you talk to them, the more you find out about their backstories, and you don't have to complete the game, but they filled in these holes to where this shop owner that you're talking to versus the cantina owner that you're talking to, they have backstories that can just flesh out the world more for you if you're just playing very casually and enjoying the game, but then also those can kind of help you with the game as well. One thing to kind of note with the Spy Fox games in general, there's 3 main games that follow this same structure, and it's fun to see if you play this game and then you play the games that were released after it. There are a lot of references, like tongue-in-cheek references to this game. Characters make reappearances. They talk about the different aspects of the game or the plot, things like that. And it's just, I think it's a great attention to detail that the creators have made and that they've just enjoyed making it as well. The dialogue and the voice acting, I think, is done really well. Nothing sounds like overly childish. It doesn't really talk down to the player, even though it is a game for kids. They're not being treated like they're stupid. Some things may, prod you with more hints to kind of give you a little more guidance in what to do with the game, but it doesn't ever feel like you're being pandered to or talked down to. So I think they did a great job with the kind of the writing and the voice acting as far as that. some things that are just not, it's a very limited game. So overall, it's not a really in-depth story. It's not a very realistic story. It is what it is. It's kind of a goofy, funny, like, kids game. The plot is over dramatic. It's complete impossibility. The gadgets and weapons are completely unbelievable. It's not really grounded in realism, and so of course that's kind of a critique for the game, and fully acknowledge that. But I personally didn't deduct any points for that, because I just don't think that that's not the intention of the game. It's not designed that way. Overall, the story could be seen as, because it's, very limited and very cartoonish, is that it's really flat and kind of boring, and, there's not any big plot twist in the story, things like that. But again, I didn't take points off, because I just kind of took the game at face value for what it is. Again, in the same way, there's no side quests, there's no, extra things to complete, there's no character customization, things like that don't really occur in this game. You can't pick different characters to play as, you don't play from different point of views, things like that, which in certain games can help flesh out and round out that story more. That just doesn't exist in this game. So, but I don't really have a lot of negatives to really say. I think most of the other stuff kind of comes out in the other categories that we review. But as far as the story goes, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The product that you're experiencing is exactly what you've paid for. So you're given very realistic expectations straight from the jump, and then they fulfill those expectations very well. So for that reason, I gave it 2 out of 2 points.
Okay. For me, in character, story, and world, I gave it 1 out of 2 points. And I'll talk about why. So before I jump in, I kind of want to say that I think that this might be something that, this might be an episode where we come at a lot of these categories with different perspectives, just because of our experiences with them. And me being in my late 20s experiencing this for the first time, I'm going to see it differently than you, who's been experiencing it for many, many more years than that. So, apologies in advance if I come across as overly critical.
No, I think that's really the point. And that's why I tried to say from the beginning, like, this does have nostalgic, rose-colored lenses in my review.
So, for me, there is 0 character growth in this entire game. There's no character that has, any sort of growth, really. All the characters are the exact same at the beginning as they are at the end. Which, for the game that you're getting, it's not necessarily needed. You're not, playing this to see, all the lessons that Spy Fox learns. That's not the kind of game, and it's not the kind of story that you're looking for. So it's not exactly a negative, but if you're looking for something that's feels really deep in that way, you're not going to get it with this game. And all the characters on that note are stereotypes or homages to somebody else. So, and I think this is good for a children's game, because children want cartoonish characterizations of personalities. That's what makes characters, I think, memorable to young children, is the more characterized somebody's personality is, the easier it is for them to remember. So again, do I think it's a bad thing? No, not for a 7-year-old, but for me, maybe, because then it makes every character very predictable. And while I wasn't necessarily expecting a big plot twist or anything in the game, it's okay, we've established at the very beginning that Spy Fox is James Bond, and so he's gonna act that way, and Monkey Penny is Money Penny, so she's gonna act in that way, and William the Kid is the over-the-top cartoonish villain, so he's going to act that way. And so everybody delivers what you expect, but there is no subversion of expectation. So for me as an adult, it does feel a little bit like there's nowhere to go after the initial establishing with as far as characters go. The world is pretty small. However, again, this kind of goes back to if you're a child, I'm sure this game feels much bigger. But then as an adult, you play something like Breath of the Wild, and Spy Fox feels very small by comparison. I do have to say that despite the fact that the world feels very small, I do agree with your point about the more you talk to the characters, the more you realize that they have been written a backstory, and they do have like facets to their history that you could miss. So it's worth like taking the time to talk to people. And I think the relationships between the characters that have relationships feel legit. I mean, especially with like Moneypenny and Professor Quack and Walter and Spy Fox, it's like you do feel like these people are a team and they've gotten to know each other well and, you know how to work with each other well. So I buy that. However, I think the biggest reason that I did not give it more than 1 point is because at no point during the game did I ever feel a real pressure to, like in the conflict, to save the world. Nothing felt urgent enough, I guess, to me to like elicit any sort of like, okay, we've got to get this done. People are at danger. And obviously you don't want to put so much pressure on a 5-year-old child that like they can't handle it and can't continue the game. But I guess I just wanted like at least near the end for there to feel, I wanted to feel like there was some sort of sense of urgency in regards to like end game, I guess, and I just never felt that. It all felt the same casual pace as the rest of the game.
You didn't feel tension when the cows were drowning in milk and you had to like set them free?
Honestly, no.
By putting the key card in there and you didn't feel that tension?
No, honestly, I didn't.
No, and I think that's completely fine. For an adult, you're not. And I think a lot of the nature of the game just, it's not designed to make you feel this overarching pressure,
right? Like
you said.
So I didn't think it was bad. It was just things that I feel like, when I look at video games as a whole, I know what I think is good, and I think Spy Fox was just lacking in some of those areas in regards to character, story, and world. So 1 out of 2 points for me.
All right. And I think that's completely valid. I think that for Tori and I in this review, again, I am heavily reviewing this with the perspective of, with this game being for an intended audience of, 6 to 10 years old. So for the next category in mechanics, it reflects that as well. This game does not have these very complex mechanics of a game, but in my review, that's not the intention of the game. You're not going to get these really complex mechanics. So out of total possible score of 2 for mechanics, I gave this 2 out of 2 points. It's a very old school, almost like a Flash type point and click adventure game. There's nothing really, you do not use the keyboard at all in this game. It's literally you just click with the mouse. Again, there are a lot of games that are still coming out that are point-and-click adventure games. We reviewed a Nancy Drew game. It's point-and-click. There are a lot of, the mobile games and the, Big Fish adventure games that I think I may have mentioned before. They're all point-and-click adventure games. You use the mouse. You don't use anything else. In this game, I think it does a good job, especially in the time that the game was made, of utilizing those mechanics really well. The way that the game works with there being plot-specific and game-specific things to click on, and then there's also these extra things. You can click anywhere in the world with Humongous Entertainment Games, and you get these little, I guess you could call them Easter eggs that, bugs are crawling, or there's a paper falls down, or something turns into a paper airplane and flies across the screen, things like that are just kind of little fun Easter eggs that I think for kids is really entertaining. With kind of the age appropriateness of this game, I like the fact for kids that with this game, if you click on words, Spy Fox will read those to you. A lot of the ages that this game is targeted for may not be reading as well, or reading fully. So if you click on an exit sign, SpyFox will say it says exit. So I think I appreciate that in games for kids, because that's how young of an audience this game is designed for. So just as like a note to, you know, parents that could be listening or anything like that, you know, that is helpful for your child if they want to play this game. One thing in this game that I really enjoy is that, you know, SpyFox has his watch that you can click in the bottom right-hand corner of the game, and at any point in the game you can call SpyFox's companion Monkey Penny and get in-game hints. I really like that it's like similar to many other games, the hint line aspect of it, instead of you having to go back to the like HQ to get hints and talk to people. The guidance in that is really user friendly. It doesn't bog down the game that you have to go back to a certain location to get hints in the game. The puzzles are pretty well designed for the target audience. There are different puzzles where it's, you know, you may play a game of chance, like you have to play Go Fish to get a certain item. There's a puzzle where you kind of have to plot longitude and latitude and like be able to understand how coordinates work on a map. There's a puzzle that's more of a visual puzzle where you have to match the colored cables with certain panels of chips and things like a computer chip. The colors and cables have to line up and match, so like a visual puzzle. Again, they're all really, really simple because it's designed for a young audience, but I think in that way, they're done very well. They're still done very well. It could be challenging if the child is young enough. If for an adult, it's really not that challenging at all because it's just not designed to be an adult level puzzle. There are also mini games in this game, which we didn't even touch on when Tori and I played it, so she might not even be aware. But on the watch where you can like go and get hints, every SpyFox game has a little button that says fun. And there's a game that's similar to, I don't even know what I would compare it to, but it's kind of a side-scrolling shooter game where you have to collect things or shoot enemies, similar to like an old-style arcade game like Asteroid or Centipede or Donkey Kong, like similar style game where it's just constantly moving and you have to see how far you can get and how long you can go. Mm-hmm. So that aspect of it is pretty fun. Saving and loading the game is really straightforward. It's just you can save at any point in the game. There's no autosave or save points that you have to get to when you're working through the game. The talk balloons, I think, are really well done in this game when you're trying to collect information. SpyFox has like a little notepad with the talk bubble, so you can talk to any character about any topic you have in your little notepad, if you will. I like the aspect that you can literally talk to somebody that may have nothing to do or no information, and if you use that talk balloon on that character, they have something to say. I just think that's very well designed. It makes it really easy, or they'll give you a hint as to who you should talk to about it. So it keeps the game from being overly difficult if you're trying. You're trying to move forward and progress through the game. It doesn't punish you for just trying whatever you feel like you could try to move forward in the game. The biggest thing that I think is really appealing about the SpyFox games in general is the replayability is really high with this game. There are multiple pathways. Mm-hmm. This game in particular, there's 3 different items you are attempting to obtain. It could be any of those 3 when you start the game up. And then there are 2 different pathways to get to a quote-unquote secret hideout. So
I read somewhere that there's 12 possible like versions that you can play.
Yeah.
So 12 is a lot of pathways for a children's game, I feel.
Right. And I remember as a kid experiencing this, and like I would have my save file and my brother would have a save file, and we would be playing 2 totally different games, at least in our experience. A lot of the stuff was really similar. We might know, like, oh, you should talk to this person, or, oh, you need to go find this item, or use this gadget. Some of it may be similar, but especially when you're back in the olden days when you shared a computer with your siblings, it was really fun to be getting different experiences that's randomized when you start the game up. It does make it kind of difficult if you're wanting to play through every different pathway, but I think that each potential pathway that you may encounter is all equally entertaining and enjoyable. I think that is not common in a lot of point-and-click adventure games, and it's not common in a lot of children's games. You just put the disc in or start the game up on Steam, and you have one game, and that's the only way you're going to play it. And this multi-pathway format is just, I think it's really enjoyable, and it should be pretty noteworthy because it's not common, because it's a lot of work to do that. So, all in all, to say, out of 2 points, I gave it 2 points for mechanics. Within, like I said before, I'm trying to just be very clear, because I don't want to give this game a high review and people will be like, you thought that game was as good as Breath of the Wild, like you said. Like, it's just a completely different game. So, for the game, in the time it was released, for the intended audience, I think it gets full points in my review for mechanics.
Okay. So for mechanics, out of 2 possible points, I also gave it 2 points. I think this is actually where this game shines, and I'll explain why. So point and click is the entire setup. This was the time, I feel like this was the era where PC gaming was now becoming accessible to the general audience. Most of that audience was going to be children. Adults weren't sitting down really and like PC gaming in the way that they are today. So the demographic was sort of these slightly educational, like the edutainment kind of idea, where it's like, yes, this is fun for children, but like we are trying to teach like, you know, decent puzzle skills and you know, deductive reasoning and like just small things like that, pairing items together that would make sense to work. And so I think that Spy Fox and really Humongous Entertainment as a whole was at the forefront of this sort of, I guess, I don't want to call it a trend because it never really went away, but just kind of this new, I guess, territory. I think Humongous Entertainment was kind of there at the forefront of this. I think I'd be surprised if anybody between like 24 and 31 did not know the name Humongous Entertainment. Like, I would be surprised if you were like, I don't know what that is. So just because it's point and click the whole time through, I think does not in any way make it a negative. Point and click is one of my favorite types of games. Really, I have 3 types of games that I myself gravitate toward. That's point and clicks, that's visual novels, and that's turn-based RPGs. And some people look at me when I say that and they're like, oh, so you don't actually play any real games, and I want to smack them in the face. But I really enjoy a point and click. I think that a game does not need to be difficult or stressful for me to have a good time with it. And so that's what you get with these sorts of mechanics. I really love when a game has in-game help that is actually beneficial. I hate hints that are too vague or too hand-holdy, and I think this game has a good balance of both while still being age appropriate. Like a 6-year-old is obviously going to need a little bit more direct of a hint than like I am, but I still don't want to be told what to do exactly. So I think a go talk to this person, they may have advice for you, is a pretty great hint while still being direct. It doesn't spoil anything upcoming for you. So I think for a kid's game, the in-game help that's available to you is really helpful. We talked about the multiple pass thing. I think it's really honestly commendable to build 12 potential like randomized versions of this game that a player can experience, because when you're 8 and you have 4 computer games and 2 Game Boy games, which was basically my life growing up, you're going to end up replaying these games multiple times. And if I was playing literally the exact same experience every single time, I would have been like, Mom, I need a new video game. But with something like this, you really are getting your parents' money's worth, really, out of it, because you're like, okay, well, last time I had to find the key card and I had to do the underwater puzzle to get into the the secret lair, but this time maybe let's see what'll happen. Oh, I have to find a diode this time, and oh, I have to go to ruins. Like, this is all new. Like, and there's a level of sort of excitement I think that can come along with that, and it does make the idea of replayability enjoyable instead of feeling like a chore. I think that some things could end up frustrating. For me, in particular, the first time we did 2 pathways when me and Holland streamed this on my channel. Shameless plug, twitch.tv/rebudkey. We stream stuff together, but we streamed this, and we played 2 pathways, and I played the first one, and then I kind of watched as Holland did a second. So in the first pathway, there is a puzzle where you're dancing the tango with Russian Blue, and you have to drop Walter into her bag so he can basically bug it. And I was really confused because I didn't understand why it wouldn't, like, take. And there's nothing really in the game that, like, gives you a great indication of when you're supposed to drop Walter into the bag. So, like, little things like that could end up frustrating because it's like, well, I thought I had a great idea, but it's obviously not the right one because it didn't work. When in reality, it is the right thing. There's just like a tiny, tiny little timed window for you to do it, and no huge, clear indication of that. So I think that something like that could end up like a little annoying, but I didn't take any points off because of that. It's just something to note.
I think that's something that notably has drastically changed in video games as technology has changed. That timing in older games is a lot of times so much more difficult to master than timing in newer games. I think the response time has changed, has gotten so quick. If you're used to playing modern games, like, it's milliseconds that your reflexes are responding to something that's happening on screen. And a lot of older games, the timing windows are just very different because that lag and response is taken into account.
True.
So I think overall, while that's a completely valid critique for an older game, I think that also, like you said, would be a really common critique because technology has just changed so much.
My next note is not necessarily about the game, but just kind of like a thought that I had. So I think porting this game to the Switch was an interesting choice. I mean, it works well enough, don't get me wrong. Mechanically, it's fine. But it makes me wonder, I've noticed that over the last year or so, maybe 2 years, Nintendo has been porting a lot of things that they have never really had, like, in their library. Like, I know that for a while they did port Spy Fox to Wii, but from what I understand, it was a download only title and there were so many issues with it, they pulled it off the eShop after a pretty short while. So it's interesting to me. I feel like not just with this game, but I've been noticing a lot of new things kind of being ported to the Switch. I feel like indie games are really huge right now on the Switch. So I just wonder, like, I'm curious. I almost wish that I could have been like a fly in the wall with the conversation between like Humongous and Nintendo. And if they have plans to port more things, I mean, they have a pretty large library. If you look at all their series, Freddy Fish, Putt Putt, Pajama Sam, all of those. I wonder if that's something that would be, I guess, down the pipeline for us. But I think if you're gonna port it to a console, Switch is the perfect choice. Just the way that the system is set up, I feel like, using your left analog stick as a mouse is probably really seamless. And also, I think your audience for the Switch is going to be closer to the audience that would have grown up with these games in general. Not to say that there aren't gamers that I think kind of like overlap between like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, but I think there's also a lot of gamers that are very loyal to one, and a lot of it has to do with the kinds of games that they like and their sort of play style. So I think that if you were to if you had a choice, like if Humongous Entertainment had a choice, we can port Spy Fox to Switch, Xbox One, or PS5, what do we do? I feel like Switch is the most logical choice. Just mechanically, not even like anything else, although I think those things can also be taken into consideration, but just mechanically I feel like it makes the most sense to put it on the Switch. So because of that, I actually feel like this is where the game shines the brightest, is in their mechanics, so that's why I gave it full 2 out of 2 points.
Cool. All right, so the next category is aesthetics, and we also have a total possible score of 2 for this one. I gave this 1 out of 2. Again, it's a really old game. It's ancient history. It's from the 90s, so it's, practically your grandpa's game at this point in
If your
society.
grandpa was playing Spy Fox, I'll be impressed.
Yeah, if your grandpa was playing Spy Fox, please let them listen to this episode, because that would be amazing. And let us interview him, because that would be awesome. I do think some positives. The cartoony style of the Spy Fox games are very consistent throughout the game. The artistic style is very consistent. All the characters look like they fit in the same world. They're all, drawn and designed very well. And it all fits with kind of the general Humongous Entertainment brand. I mean, Spy Fox looks like he could fit in the same world as Freddy Fish or Putt Putt or the Backyard Sports worlds. They all just stylized. They're all stylized very consistently.
I always forget that the Backyard Sports was done by Humongous Entertainment.
Yeah. Interestingly, just side tangent, I never played, the only Humongous Entertainment games I played growing up were the Backyard Sports games and the Spy Fox games.
And what's funny is mine were the inverse. So I played Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam, and Putt Putt. But I had never played a Spy Fox game, and I've never played Backyard Sports. So it's like we just played like the opposite ones from Humongous.
So another thing I think is really good in this game that probably does not get any love, and it should, is the music in this game is so good. The music when you're doing, high-speed stuff or using your gadgets kind of has that really hard, that brassy James Bond feel, but then the music that plays because you're on a Greek island fits the world there as well. So, and it's pretty seamless in transitioning depending on where you're going. If you're underwater, the score changes versus if you're on the boat versus if you're in the cantina. The tango music is different from the waltz music that plays. It's just all done really, really well. I think the music in this game which is something I hardly ever really notice when I play games, but in this game I feel like it is really noteworthy because it's a kid's game, but the music just slaps. I didn't give it full points. It is that really flat looking artistic style. It looks, kind of like 2D hand-drawn style. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, we've watched movies and animated movies and TV shows and film that and video games as well that have a little more depth than this game has. There's not a lot of shading in the characters. There's not a lot of shadows shown. The Spy Fox is completely tonal. His orange fox fur is one color across his whole body. His suit is white completely. There's just, it's very minimal in the sense that he looks like a paper cutout versus looking like a 2D hand-drawn character. So it kind of gives it this very flat-looking aesthetic, and I don't think it necessarily needed to. It could have been more artistically developed than it is. The cutscenes are pretty good. They kind of feel cinematic. They show different angles when the characters are talking with the different cutscenes and things like that. Also, a lot of games now have subtitles integrated to the game. When this game was released, it did not have subtitles integrated. The Switch version in particular lets you turn on subtitles. They're absolutely horrible. I cannot stress how terrible these subtitles are in this game. The lettering is crappy. The placement is horrible. It covers half the screen if somebody's talking a paragraph. It literally is like half the screen is covered with a paragraph of this awful looking text. It's awful, which I can't even express how awful it is. It's so bad. And it's so distracting from the game, which if you need subtitles in a game, the last thing they should be is distracting, because you can't hear well enough, or maybe you're wanting to have more clarity of what you're hearing, and it shouldn't then block half your visuals, because you need... I mean, I don't see how you can enjoy the game with the subtitles on. That was one thing, because we turned them on when Tori was playing, and I was like, this is just gonna annoy me the whole game, and it did. So I can't stand how bad the subtitles are in this game. It was a little rant. In general, though, I think the characters and the world is pretty well designed artistically. I think it holds up pretty well, especially on a platform like the Switch, kind of like how Tori was mentioning. I think it fits that platform well, too. And then, the games that they're available on Steam, they work well still on a modern computer screen versus an old, 1990s Windows computer. But I think that overall the other games that use this kind of artistic style just aesthetically look a little better. So I felt like 1 out of 2 points was kind of appropriate for this.
Okay. For aesthetics, out of 2 points, I gave 1 point as well. I can pretty much sum up everything I'm going to say with there's really nothing spectacular about the aesthetics.
Right.
The positives are, yes, cutscenes are a bit more cinematic. They play around with angles a little bit more, and I appreciate that. And the music, like you mentioned, is really fun. It's really good, and it fits where it's placed. There's no music that feels out of place. However, everything else is just simple. And lines are a little blocky. Sound quality is a little crunchy. And it's like, sure, but like in 1997, it was fine. It was acceptable. However, it's starting to show its age at this point, and not really in a great way. I really don't have a lot to say. I just feel like it's not bad, but it's not really good. Like you said, the subtitles are bad. And they're often wrong. I noticed they would like not match with what the voice acting was saying, which I feel like that's a really easy thing to edit before you release that, but okay. And so I like subtitles usually when I'm watching movies or whatever. I know I'm kind of like in the minority, I think, about this, but I like watching things with subtitles, but I really don't understand why they didn't just change the font, make it slightly smaller, and then like center it, instead of like these weird colored chunky letters that covered up so much of the screen. Like, it would have been such an easy way to like make it more pleasing, and they just did not. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say at all. I know I've talked for about a minute, and that's about it. So just 1 out of 2 points. It's just there.
Well, and another thing I think aesthetically where Spy Fox kind of struggles is that the characters in Spy Fox are anthropomorphic animals, which have been done for decades. So it's not like they're trying something new in the character design or the style choices. It's like Putt-Putt was a car. It was a talking car. And Pajama Sam was more human, a human-looking character. I don't know. I don't know if
Pajama Sam is human.
I don't know if he's human or not, but he has
he's
more
humanoid.
He has human features, and But here you have Spy Fox, and then compare that with like Walt Disney's Robin Hood, which is another anthropomorphic fox, and there's just no comparison in how well those two characters are portrayed and visually appealing. So I think that's another reason it's just not really notable. It's like it's a fox that walks on 2 legs. Well,
like we've seen this before, and this one's not impressive. So.
Right. But so that's why it's kind of like 1 out of 2. I think is just the general consensus.
And I genuinely feel like I'm being a little generous with 1 point.
I mean, probably I kind of give 1 because I just in prepping for this episode, I just was like, the score is so good. I was like listening to it, and I was like, man,
the music is good. Yeah, and like I said, I appreciate the cutscenes, but
yeah, and I feel like we're being a little generous as well, because it's like, this is also a kid's game.
Yeah, I'm trying to judge it within the context of what it is, too.
Right. So, all right. Second to last category, personal taste and preference. Always, as always, total possible score of 2. I gave it 2 out of 2. I freaking love the Spy Fox games. I just think they're great. They always make me smile. I actually pulled up Steam the other day and played Operation Ozone just for fun, because I really enjoy playing the games. They're just really good entertainment for me and relaxing, and I just really like them. So I'm extremely biased in this part of the review. I tried to be more unbiased, which is hard to do. It holds a lot of childhood nostalgia for me, but I found that I still find it enjoyable as an adult in prepping for this podcast. I think the humor is pretty engaging, and I like that you can progress through it as quickly as you want, or you can take your time and kind of explore more of the world if you want to. And then the multiple pathways make replayability pretty fun. Interestingly, I think Dry Cereal is my least favorite Spy Fox game. Between playing Spy Fox 2 Some Assembly Required, which is the second game, and then Spy Fox Operation Ozone, which is the third game, I think I enjoy those other 2 games more, but they're a lot less accessible. So I think as far as I know at least, the only way you can play all 3 of the games is on Steam. But for Tori and I preparing for this podcast, we decided to play the first one and play it on Switch, because that was kind of the easiest way for us to do it. But if you've played this game and it's not quite your cup of tea, but you would be willing to give it another try, like, I would recommend personally, just from my personal experience, to play the other games, because I personally just like them more. So yeah, 2 out of 2. I don't want to talk, too much about it, because there's just not a whole lot to say. It's a really simple game, but I still enjoy it very much. And I know a lot of that is because I just have a lot of good childhood memories and playing it with friends and talking through, like, trying to figure out how to play it before the internet was really a helpful thing for game walkthroughs. You had to figure it out all on your own, and I have a lot of fond memories of that. So 2 out of 2 for me.
Okay, great. For personal taste and preference, I gave it 1.5 points out of 2.
Oh, I'm surprised.
This is the kind of style of game that I like. Like I mentioned before, there are 3 genres of video games that I gravitate the most towards, and point and clicks are one of those. And there was no point in playing this game that I was not having fun, despite all of the critiques. Like, really, with anything, doesn't it kind of just boil down to, is it enjoyable? And I was enjoying myself 100% of the time. So I think for, personally, it does fit my taste. Now, the reason I didn't give it full 2 points is mostly just because, as an adult, it felt very silly. It just felt like such a silly game, and, not embarrassingly silly or anything like that, but just kind of oh my gosh, this feels childish, because it is, and there's nothing wrong with that, but because of that, I was kind of just I there's a part of me that's I think I would like this a little more if I had grown up with it. So that's why I just gave it 1.5 points out of 2.
Yeah, I think that's completely valid. It is a ridiculous game. I'm just, full disclosure, it's pretty ridiculous. All right, so last category is creativity for video games. If you haven't heard us review a video game before in our prior episodes, all of our other categories, we have total possible score of 1 for creativity, but with video games, we have a total possible score of 2, because video games, just by nature, have the potential for a lot of creativity. It's just the way that they're made. So I actually gave this 1 out of 2 points for creativity, which I admit probably could be a little generous, but I think, and I tried to keep the creativity evaluation limited to this game versus to Humongous Entertainment as a whole, but it's kind of hard to separate because this is a representation of Humongous Entertainment. So I think that Humongous Entertainment in general, it's a pretty great progression that their point and click adventure games progress by age as you get older. So I think Freddy Fish and Putt Putt are kind of like the youngest age demographic, and then Pajama Sam is kind of in the middle, and then Spy Fox is technically seen as like the oldest age demographic. And I think that this game in general does a really good job of that. It is geared towards an older child audience, so you have the kind of excitement of, you know, a spy, James Bond-esque missions where you're trying to save the world. Whatever that really looks like is usually kind of ridiculous, but it is, you know, very kid-friendly in that sense as well. I think that in the reason I gave it a point, I don't think it's anything overly revolutionary, or I mean, you could argue one way or another that it's kind of an iconic game. Humongous Entertainment games in general are kind of iconic as far as point-and-click adventure games in the 90s, early 2000s. But I do think it's just a very high-quality point-and-click adventure game for kids. It doesn't talk down to a child audience. It doesn't make it overly impossible or punishing. It integrates these kind of James Bond-esque homages in a really creative way for a really young audience, which, I mean, I wouldn't let a 6-year-old child watch a James Bond movie.
Absolutely not.
That's not age appropriate. But playing this game, I mean, I'm not a big James Bond fan. My dad is, but he will reference something with James Bond, and I know what he's talking about because Spy Fox referenced it in one of their games. And so they really did a good job of integrating that into their games and making it truly respectful references to James Bond. Now, it's not all James Bond. It's not like you're playing a James Bond game, but some of the references are just really done well, and I think that that's pretty notable. And I think the problem solving puzzles, it's not really like an educational game per se, although it does kind of encourage this critical thinking, problem solving skills with kids. That's pretty age appropriate, but then it still stays really fun. I think that in my evaluation of this, I tried to kind of think of like around the same age demographic, the really quality point and click games for kids were the Jumpstart series and then the Spy Fox series. And those were really high quality games. And Spy Fox and Humongous Entertainment's games in general still were that kind of edutainment genre, whereas Jumpstart was completely educational. And so I think that this game did a really good job of encouraging these critical thinking, problem solving skills with kids while still being entertaining and fun in a way that was different from something like Jumpstart First Grade for a kid. So I think that it balances that really well, and then the fact that it holds up pretty well when you compare it to other point-and-click adventure games that either just weren't very good or just almost didn't even really exist. It was kind of a market that didn't really exist in the era when this game was created. So I give it kind of half credit for creativity, so 1 out of 2 points for me.
Okay. And then for me, out of 2 points for creativity, I only gave it half a point. Honestly, it just feels like every other Humongous game I've ever played. And I don't think there's really anything spectacular about this game. Now, I might feel differently if I have played other Spy Fox games, but I have not. So just with Dry Cereal, as much as I enjoyed it, I don't think there was any ground that was broken in regards to kind of the genre or demographic. So again, I don't want it to be like a super negative connotation or anything. I just think creativity is not where this game necessarily shined. When you like pull out of the zoom in of the game and kind of look at what it was when it came out. And so I don't really have a lot more to say than that, other than like it was fine, but it didn't feel necessarily new to me. So half a point.
All right. So my total score for this game is 8 out of 10.
Mine is 6 out of 10.
Okay.
So
I think in general, because of where we're coming from, that's kind of the expected scores, I guess. And I still just kind of want to emphasize that, like, 8 out of 10 for this game is, I think, you could argue, as an adult, I think it's pretty generous as an adult playing Spy Fox, but I kind of wanted my review to be, I guess, reined in a little bit, and that 8 out of 10 is an 8 out of 10 game for somebody that is closer to the target audience of this game. So, as an adult playing the game, I would probably score closer to Tori's score of 6, but I kind of wanted to give an evaluation of this game if you're considering buying this game or letting your child play this, or buying this game for your child or letting your child play this game. I think it's an 8 out of 10 game in that aspect of it. So that I kind of wanted to approach it a little differently, and then I also do have memories as a child in this age demographic and how I enjoyed that as a kid. So I tried not to let that bias my review in the sense that, like, oh, you only gave it high scores because you just really like it. No, I tried to think about, like, as a child, was this game challenging for me, etc., etc. So that I want to add that disclaimer at the end because some people might listen to this episode and want to know would my 7 or 8 year old enjoy this game. And so I would say for your 7 or 8 year old, probably an 8 out of 10 would be the appropriate score for that child.
Okay. I think that's pretty good last note then. Are you ready for lightning round?
I am ready for lightning round.
Okay. I don't have a ton of questions, but your favorite character?
Spy Fox.
Mine is Walter because he's little and wears a little dress shirt with a tie, and it's so freaking cute.
Walter Wireless.
Very cute. Your least favorite character?
Well, I don't know if I really have a least favorite character, but I think I would have to say Mata Hari because as a child, I took like days to try and find her and figure out where she was hiding when you have to look for her. And so that always has this little seed of resentment for her. So
I think my least favorite character was the weasel man outside of the fancy boat. He just kind of annoyed me.
Yeah, out of the SS Deadweight.
Yeah.
He's pretty annoying. He's a pretty horrible dude.
So that's why I pick him. Okay, your favorite location or set?
Probably the cantina.
I was gonna say that too.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a cool place. Like, even as an adult, I would hang out there.
Yeah.
It'd be a pretty cool spot to hang out.
I think so too. We kind of talked about this already, but did you play any of the other Humongous games? I think you said you played...
I played predominantly Spy Fox, and then we had backyard baseball, backyard soccer, backyard football, backyard basketball. But we didn't get backyard basketball till later. It was mostly backyard baseball. And probably this Spy Fox game and Operation Ozone were the ones that we had the most frequently. And then my only exposure to Pajama Sam and Putt Putt were the demos that were available on some of those games.
I played Freddy Fish more than any others. My first best friend, I guess you could say, when we were 6. She was also the person who got me into Pokemon, but she had a couple Freddy Fish games and we would play them over and over and over. And then when life separated us, I remember at that point I picked up for myself a Pajama Sam game and a Putt Putt game, but I honestly don't remember which ones they were. That memory is kind of foggy, but those were the 3 series that I had played as a child.
Yeah, it was funny. I was talking to my brother the other day, and he was saying he actually came over, and I was playing through Spy Fox Operation Ozone, and he kind of looked over my shoulder, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Operation Ozone." He knew which game it was, but he was like, "Isn't that the second one?" And I said, "No, it's actually the third one." And he was like, which one's the second one again? And I told him it was Spy Fox Some Assembly Required. And he was like, he said that he always thinks that Operation Ozone is the second game because that was the second game that we had. Oh. We didn't get what is technically, canonically, the second Spy Fox game until much later. So the two games we always played was Dry Cereal and Operation Ozone. So to this day, he still thinks, like, he has to remind himself that Operation Ozone isn't the second game because that was the second one that we ever played.
That's fun.
So.
Okay, question 4. Your favorite pathway. Do you have any preferences to how you play it?
Yeah, so I prefer the pathway with either the key card or the diode. Probably the diode is one of my favorite pathways when you have to find the diode. And then the one when you have to use the frog suit with the boat versus when you have to do the ruins. I just enjoy that one more.
I really liked going to the ruins. So I think I would say that was probably more preferable for me. But I think as far as the piece that you need to find for the panel, I don't know if I would have a preference on that, but I liked the ruin puzzle a little bit more than the underwater stuff.
Yeah.
So
I think that the only one you didn't see was the one with the key card, and with that pathway you have to get into a safe, like you have to use a combination to get into the safe. But I also, as much as I like the boat pathway to get to the secret base or whatever, I remember having the hardest time playing for the captain's lucky charm and getting Go Fish, winning Go Fish.
I liked that.
Yeah. Actually, I think that would be my least favorite character is the pig that you have to play Go Fish. Because I would lose Go Fish. I struggled so much. And you're stuck. You just have to play. You have to beat him in Go Fish to get the captain's lucky charm. And I remember that being so hard because sometimes the RNG just killed you in that one and you would just lose every time.
Yeah. Okay, final question. Do you think that it plays better on PC or on Switch?
Oh, absolutely on PC. Absolutely.
I don't have personal experience, but I would say that is probably true.
Yeah. And another thing that we didn't really talk about in the kind of the pathways, but the one thing with the PC that I think is so much easier is with every Spy Fox game, you have the opportunity to catch the bad guy or the game ends before you're able to catch the bad guy. And usually it depends on how quickly you're able to click and react to kind of a pathway you would need to take to catch the villain. And especially in Dry Cereal, it's difficult there's a ramp you have to click, like with the truck. Your Spy Fox is driving the truck and you have to click the ramp fast enough to take the truck up to the blimp that's flying away, which if you have not played this game, that's going to sound like the biggest, most ridiculous sentence you've ever heard. But that in particular on the Switch is very difficult to do, and it's much easier to do on the PC. So those quick reaction clicks are much easier on a PC. So if you've never played it and you want like the full experience, personally I would recommend playing it on Steam or some other PC method. So. Okay.
All right, anything else?
No, that's it. I feel like I've talked way too much about Spy Fox anyway, so.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for joining us for this episode. We, of course, look forward to having you back. Make sure you're following us on our social medias. We often put teasers up of what the next episode is going to be, and you have a chance to vote and guess what the next episode's going to be, which is really fun. So make sure you're checking us out. We have Twitter at Lion and Mouse Pod and Instagram at Lion and Mouse Podcast. Our website is lionandmousepodcast.com. Our rules of engagement are there, and our handwritten notes from each episode get uploaded there as well. We have a suggestion box on our website. You can tell us what you'd like us to review next. We will take all of those and put them into consideration. We also have a Patreon, and you can support us there. If you do, you'll receive gifts and exclusive content for that additional support. And if you like what you hear, just give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. That really helps us out. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you again soon.